So, Shrikant,
Hmm.
suppose there is an exam.
Huh.
And you are usually the first ranker, and just before the exam, the second ranker comes to you asking for help with some problems.
Okay.
Would you help them or not help them?
What standard am I in?
Ninth.
Oh, definitely not help them.
Okay, why?
Because I want to be the first ranker and continue being the first ranker. If it were 10th, then I would probably help them. Because at board level, it doesn't really matter whether I help them or not. It's a whole different ball game there.
What is the difference between these two situations?
Uh, at standard 9th, if I help them, then I'm reducing my own chances of coming first.
Yes.
At standard 10th, we are both competing against a much bigger pool of students because it's a board exam, it's a state board and national board and internet, whatever board it is, where there are much more people. So by helping each other, we'll get to learn better, quicker, faster, more.
Both of you can get a
Yeah,
better percentage in the board exam.
correct.
Whereas in the first case, both of you can't be first rankers, right?
We can be, but I would rather not be.
So yeah, this is a very important thing, I believe. Economists call it a zero-sum game versus a positive-sum game, right? The first one, where one of you only can be a first ranker, which means for you to become a first ranker, that person has to lose, is called a zero-sum game.
Makes sense.
Zero-sum situation, right? As in, for one person to go positive, the other has to go negative. The only way you win is by pushing somebody down.
The only way I win is this.
Whereas the second one, where you said it's a board exam, so if we help each other, instead of both getting 87%, both can get 89 and both can get 91 and both can get 94, right?
Those are some really big percentages.
Right. So that's a positive sum game. As in, both of you, after an activity or after you get together, engagement, both got a positive value out of it. Right?
Yes.
And this understanding the difference between these two and which situation in life is zero sum, which situation is positive sum, is, I believe, one of the more important things you can do in your life, and it can change how you approach things. It can change how much you get out of life.
I think a lot of it also boils down to age and maturity because as a kid, I was led to believe that everything in life is zero sum. But the more I live, I realize that no, everything in life is actually better if you treat it as a positive sum game and look at it from a positive.
So in fact, that is going to be the important message of this episode, which is which things you are inadvertently approaching as if it's a zero sum situation, but in reality it's a positive sum situation, or it is a zero sum situation, but with a few tweaks you can convert it into positive sum, right? But before we get there,
this is also something that you might have heard as win-win-win situation.
Exactly. I mean, a lot of the times we think of situations as win-lose. For me to win, you have to lose,
and vice versa.
Win-win situations
can definitely exist.
Not only that, a lot of situations in life are win-win.
All right.
So, but before that, I want to give an example of when I first learned that everything isn't a zero-sum game.
Please.
I mean, because we grew up in a family where, you had to save money. Every time you went to buy something, the most important thing was to haggle, try to bring the price down as much as possible. And pretty much at the end, if you were convinced that you came with the lowest price, then you won, right? Otherwise, the shopkeeper won, they got the money. Right? I mean, it was so inbuilt, we didn't even think about this.
Absolutely.
But then in my 10th standard textbook, there was a lovely story which talked about, imagine a prehistoric village, right? Everybody is on their own, everybody is hunter-gatherers, and everybody has to go get their own food per day, and then at the end go up to the stream and get their own water.
Okay.
Now,
kind of inefficient if everybody is doing it. It's but
in fact, that is how everybody was until people discovered. Say one person discovers that he tells a friend, you know what? Why don't you go and get enough food for both of us while I go and get enough water for both of us, right?
Yeah.
That way, both of them ended up saving time. right?
Correct.
Because the person who went to get the food spent a little more time on the food, but zero time on water.
Correct.
And the person who went for water spent a little more time on water and zero time on food, right?
Yeah.
Realize that this wasn't a zero-sum game. Both of them benefited,
Yeah.
right? And in
Because
fact,
otherwise, this guy would be competing for the same food resources that the first guy was
correct.
attempting.
Not just that, but also over time, what happens is that the person who has specialized in getting water, after a while realizes and has some free time, uses the free time to figure out a more efficient way of getting water
And the same for the one who's hunting and gathering.
bag.
Yeah.
So the more you specialize, the more efficiencies you can discover.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, we might do an entire episode on this. There is something called the learning curve, which says that the price of something keeps falling the more you specialize in it, right? Lots of fascinating examples.
Yeah, the sentence itself sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that episode. If it has happened by this time, you'll find the link in
But
the comments.
General concept there was that every time there is a trade between two people and nobody's holding a gun to your head, which means that you did it willingly, it means that you both benefited from it. Right?
Correct.
Every time you pay for a bunch of potatoes, right? It means that this was in your best interest, because if that person didn't give you potatoes in return for that money, you would have to go and grow potatoes yourself.
Yeah.
And if you calculate the time value of your money, that would have just been ridiculously expensive.
We've done an episode on this. Link is in the description. Go check it out. I think it's called the dollar value of your time, but we'll put a link. Go check it out.
When you're buying potatoes for 25 rupees, right? And you think, oh my God, I could have gotten it at 20. What you have to think is that, if that person hadn't given you potatoes for 25, it would have cost you 7,000 rupees to grow them yourself.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
So every such exchange, most exchanges in the world are positive sum exchanges, and we have to keep that in mind.
Unless you go to a place where haggling is the norm. For example, I remember there used to be this street in the place where I grew up, and you used to get clothes on the street, like on the footpath. There would be clothes hung up in small makeshift shops, and the tradition, or not the tradition, but basically the point of it was, you go there, you ask them for a price, and then you quote a much lower price. That was the entire game. It was essentially a game. The haggling part was baked into the price and into the system there. So if it's that kind of a scenario, then it's a different thing. But
it'd still not be a different thing if you calculate that.
Oh, come on, I am not paying 2,500 bucks for a pair of jeans, which is clearly not more than 200 bucks.
Okay, fine. Don't go to places like this. Okay.
The fun there is not the clothes that you buy. The fun there is the haggling, which is what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah. So you're paying for the privilege of haggling.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And this is not just here, but it's in a lot of places across the world where the concept of the place, or where the charm of the place, is the haggling that you do. So don't discount haggling. It is
coming back to the point of this episode. I'll give some examples of things which are viewed as zero sum, but they are not, right?
Okay.
Imagine workplace competition.
Right? It's not zero sum. Can you please tell that to all of my previous bosses who insisted that I was not competitive enough?
Exactly, it is not, right? In a workplace situation, a lot of people think that promotions are, say, zero sum. If I have to get promotion, which means that person has to do badly. Now, if you're going out of your way to ensure that that person does badly, or even if you are ensuring that you don't cooperate with that person, right? Sure, you might win the promotion by making it a zero sum game. But usually in workplaces, what can happen is that if you cooperate with each other, over time, both of you can do well, right? That one promotion, which is zero sum, isn't the only game in life.
Yeah.
Both of you get experience. The company might grow. Both might get promoted, or you don't get promoted, but you have the skills so you can get a better job elsewhere.
Yeah.
Lots of positive some opportunities, right? As in, if it's a fixed pie and both of you are fighting over it, it's a zero sum game. But most things in life, the pie is growing, right? If you are in an industry that is growing,
and most industries are growing,
so it is not a zero sum game.
Yeah, that's something to definitely look out for.
Applies at the level of the business also, right? I mean, two different companies, if they compete with each other tooth and nail, then it's bad for both of them, right? But if they both focus on growing the pie, then that's good. That's why all the egg sellers in India, I mean, they get together and they put out ads saying eggs are good for you. What are they doing? They're trying to increase the market.
Yeah.
Make it a positive sum game for all of them instead of just fighting each other to sell the limited number of eggs that people are buying.
And when you do see fighting, like those rivalry ads between Coke and Pepsi and whatnot, it is basically a way to drum up more sales. That's basically it. They are not fighting to establish dominance over the market. No, both of them have a sizable share of the market. It's not like one has a monopoly and the other doesn't. But yeah, it's all for so.
Sometimes it is, right? I mean, there was a time when Coke and Pepsi, the market wasn't quite growing and they were just fighting each other for percentage points. It was a zero sum game, and then Coke got a famous CEO who said, your competition is not with Pepsi. Your competition is with water.
Yes.
And that suddenly changed the game for Coke. Instead of competing with Pepsi, they focused on growing the market, convincing the people who are drinking water to drink Coke. And Coke never looked back, and Pepsi never caught up with Coke after that. Right?
I said something similar in the context of radio back at my old office. I told them, so when the offer of 1 GB free per day launched, everybody was like, yay, free data, so awesome, internet is going to be cheap and whatnot. I said, no, you don't realize this means that we suddenly have more competition.
Exactly.
Because now people have an alternative form of entertainment other than radio. And people laughed at me. But here we are. I am on YouTube.
Yes. So, but this brings up a good point, right? There are some things in life which are actually zero sum.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that.
All of sports,
yes,
is zero sum, right? I mean, for you to win, the other team has to lose, right?
And even in football, if you draw, you get only 1 point each.
Yeah. The total sums up to 2. The number of
Not
points sums
three.
up to 2, right?
yeah, because the winner gets 3 points, but if you draw, you get 1 point each. So you're losing there.
Right.
So draw is effectively a form of a loss.
War is zero sum, war between two countries.
Yes, of
right?
course.
Politics often is zero sum, right? I mean, only one person can win that election.
Yep.
Lawsuits are like that.
Yes.
Standing in line for water. When I was young, I lived in a place where we didn't get water in our taps all the time.
Yeah.
So we had to go. There was one common tap where there would be water for 1 hour.
Yes, that used to happen.
Everybody in the community goes there with like a couple of pots, fills the water and comes back home, and you have to stand in line.
And you were only allowed a fixed number of pots.
Why? Because it was a zero sum game. If I fill more pots, then you get to fill fewer pots because the water is going to run out after some time. Right?
And if you are Marathi, then you have heard this phrase, nalavarchi bhandano.
Yes.
If you haven't heard that phrase, please go ask a Marathi friend what nalavarchi bhandano means and why nalavarchi bhandano exists. But anyway, moving on.
And in Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, Kajol and Rani Mukherjee were in a zero-sum game because there's only one Shah Rukh Khan and only one of them was going to get it.
You really need to update your references because Kuch Kuch Hota Hai happened like decades ago.
If you have a latest movie which is a perfect example for a zero-sum game, please leave a comment.
Naveen, what examples appear to be zero-sum when you think about them, but they are actually supposed to be positive sum situations?
Suppose you are a researcher, right? Would you collaborate with another researcher? Right?
I would think so.
Right. So there is a tricky part here, right? I mean, because you think that if you have some idea and you share your ideas with another researcher,
Huh.
now suddenly the
Credit is halved.
credit is halved, right? Whereas it's not like there is a fixed amount of credit in the whole world. So the more you collaborate with people, the more ideas come out, the more research will happen. So that makes it a positive sum game. In fact, this whole thing about there being a fixed size pie that you are fighting over, that's zero sum. And you have to keep asking yourself, is that really true? Because life is not sports and war. Most of life, the pie is growing.
Speaking of war, what about love?
Yes. So unfortunately,
I know it was a very frivolous question because I was trying to do a wordplay on all is fair in love. It's not.
It is not, right? War and love are different. A lot of people
and similar
do approach a marriage as if it's a zero sum game. That I have to wear the pants in this marriage. Right? That
I wear chaddis.
My influence will increase only by making hers decrease. My power increases by making her power less. Right? I think that's like really bad.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, you have to approach any relationship as a cooperative effort to grow the pie, right?
True.
To grow the enjoyment, the things you can achieve, the things you can do together, and so on.
Yeah. Any other examples before we move on to the next question that I have, which I'm itching to ask?
So think of at a country level, right? Say if there is a disaster in a neighboring country, okay, there are a lot of people who think, why do we have to send them disaster relief, right? It's their problem, right?
Yeah.
But again, that's zero sum thinking, right? Because in reality, the countries helping each other is good for both countries, right?
Yeah.
If you don't help Bangladesh when they have a disaster, you're going to get a bunch of Bangladeshi refugees here, and now everybody is lost.
There's a wonderful story along these lines, but not country level, but more along a personal level, that I read on Reddit a while ago. It is simply called Today You, Tomorrow Me. And I can't begin to tell you what a beautiful story it is. I am not going to narrate it for you. I'm going to leave a link in the comments. Please go and read that story because it is such a beautiful example of why positive sum is necessary when interacting with people outside your own circle, whether it is a personal circle or whether it is a country circle. So this example just reminds me.
Precise example, right? That countries, when they worry that if we allow immigration, the immigrants will come and take away our jobs.
Yeah, it's a big threat.
Yes. In reality, a lot of research has shown that immigrants come in and they do jobs that the people here didn't want to do in any case. And overall, usually the economy improves.
Yes.
Right? So the pie is growing and everybody is better off.
Absolutely.
So that's another example of a positive sum situation.
Yeah. Here is the question that I've been dying to ask you. When you are in a situation, how do you figure out whether it's a zero sum situation or a positive sum situation? Because that will determine a lot of
course,
the action.
Again, just see if the pie is growing. Look at the final outcome, not just the near term final outcome, right? Like, oh, this promotion, there is only one promotion, fixed pie, but think of it as long term career, right? There the pie is growing. There isn't like a fixed amount of money to be made. There isn't a fixed amount of level that both of you can reach, right? So the pie can grow. So try to find a positive sum game that you can make there. In general, but say look at slightly long term and see if there is something that can grow instead of it being fighting over a fixed this.
Okay, now let's take a situation where I am in a zero sum situation.
Yeah.
But I want to make it a positive sum situation. Can I make a zero sum into positive?
Just the Pepsi versus Coke was an example, right?
Right. Of course.
They were fighting over a fixed market share, and that was a zero sum game. Instead,
zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
Look at the bigger picture. Now suddenly the pie is growing much bigger. The Coke converted it into a different game, right?
Think out of the box.
Yeah. So that is one thing. It is possible to convert zero sum to positive sum. Not always. Okay. but sometimes you can't. In
Okay.
which case, see if you can walk away. It is not necessary that you play all the games, right? Walk away from the game. That's also a possibility.
What's that 90s movie? The best option is to not play
Yes.
war games.
War
I don't remember. Again, we'll put a reference or
strange game.
yeah.
The only correct move is to not play at all.
Yes,
Yes.
I'm sorry if that was a spoiler for you, but if at this point you haven't watched the movie, can't do much about it.
Yeah.
But then if the way
One more thing I want to say about walking away, right?
huh?
I mean, sometimes it's that the situation is a zero-sum situation and you just walk away. Sometimes the problem is not the situation, right? It could be converted into a positive sum game, but the other person refuses to do that, right?
Ah.
Sometimes the person is a problem. So walk away from that person. Associate with people who are willing to play positive sum games. And there are people who have just grown up with a zero sum mindset. Stay away from those people.
Yeah, and managers and leaders watching this, if there are a lot of people walking away from the situation in your organization, maybe it's time for you to take a deep dive and evaluate what is it exactly that they're walking away from.
Yes.
Hint, hint. Anyway, question.
Yeah.
Why isn't everything positive sum by default? Why does zero sum even exist? Because
Well, see, I mean, when there is a fixed pie, things will be zero sum, right? I mean, long ago, we evolved in situations where there was a fixed amount of prey, fixed amount of food, right? So, whenever there is scarcity, there is zero sum games being played, and that's why our brains are built like that. But over time, we figured out how to cooperate at large levels, how to I mean, we came up with technology, we came up with science and a whole bunch of things which have grown the pie like by orders of magnitude, right? But our brain is still stuck on the African savannah. So that is why the two kinds of situations are that when there is scarcity, there is zero sum. Both in terms of evolutionary time scales, we evolved in scarcity and now we are in a world with abundance.
correct.
Another situation is that a lot of us grew up in scarcity, right? Pre 1991 India, things were tough.
Correct.
That's why we had a zero sum mindset when we were young. Our parents, some of them still have zero sum mindsets.
Yes, they do.
But the pie, India is now growing like crazy, and we are in a much better position to play positive sum games, right? So this is a scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. Look up those terms.
Or we'll do an episode one of these days on those terms. It's going to be a very short episode. Maybe we'll do a shorts or something.
Yes.
Yeah, that might help.
In general, keep in mind that something is zero sum probably because there was a scarcity in the past, which is no longer true, right? As society develops, as cooperation happens, as development happens, more and more society moves from zero sum towards positive sum.
From scarcity to abundance, therefore
Yes.
from zero sum to positive sum.
Yeah.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. And of course, if the zero sum doesn't work for you, walking away is always an option.
Well,
whether
not
from the
always. There are some times when you can't walk away, and then go ahead and play the zero sum game. Okay, I am not Jesus, I am not Gandhi, I'm not going to turn the other cheek, right? If I can't walk away, then I'm going to slap you.
If you're playing football, you have to score a goal, you have to win, man. There is no option there.
Yes.
That can't be a positive sum game. So yeah, I agree there.
Yes.
So if it's a zero sum game, you can't walk away from it. Go play it and play it to the best of your abilities. Go win.
But try not to play such games. Try to find positive sum situations. Try to convert zero sum to positive sum situation and try to walk away from zero sum situations.
Anything that looks like a zero sum in the present is very likely to become a positive sum sometime in the future.
Yes.
And that's the takeaway that we're going to leave you with today. Shrikant, Naveen,
Thank
Future
you.
IQ.